Hello, my friend. So this would be the whole Jinx the Clown series. I got some crazy news watch till the end. Enjoy the stories. Cheers. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a pale glow over the deserted amusement park. The last of the park-goers had left hours ago, and now the only sounds were the distant hum of machinery and the occasional rustle of leaves. But hidden in the shadows was a figure who thrived in this silence. Jinx, the malevolent clown, was waiting for his next victim. Tonight it was Marcus. He was a thrill-seeker, always searching for the next adrenaline rush. As he made his way towards the exit, he noticed a flicker of lights from the funhouse. Curiosity piqued, he turned back. That's when he saw Jinx. "Hey there, friend," Jinx called out, his voice a syrupy blend of charm and menace. "How would you like to stay a little longer? Free rides, all the cotton candy you can eat. The park is yours after hours." Marcus hesitated, but the allure was too strong. He shrugged, thinking it was just another crazy night. Why not? As the last of the staff departed, the park transformed. Lights blazed to life and the rides started whirring, inviting him to experience their thrills without the crowds. Marcus ran from ride to ride, his laughter echoing in the empty park. Jinx watched from the shadows, his grin growing wider with each passing minute. After a while, Jinx approached with a bag of cotton candy. "Hungry?" he asked, offering the fluffy treat. Marcus took it without question, savoring the sweet, sticky goodness. "There's one more thing," Jinx said, his eyes gleaming with a sinister light. "The funhouse. It's the best part." Marcus, now giddy from the sugar and the rides, followed Jinx to the entrance of the funhouse. As he stepped inside, the atmosphere changed. The air grew colder, and the once whimsical decorations took on a more menacing appearance. The laughter of clowns echoed eerily through the corridors. The first few rooms were typical funhouse fare with distorted mirrors and shifting floors. But as Marcus ventured deeper, the illusions became darker. Shadows moved on their own, and whispers filled the air, speaking of nightmares and lost souls. He tried to turn back, but the path seemed to have disappeared. Panic set in as he stumbled through the maze, each step taking him deeper into Jinx's domain. Finally, he reached a large room dominated by a towering slide. "Go on," Jinx urged from behind. "It's the only way out." With no other choice, Marcus sat at the top of the slide and pushed off. He expected a short, thrilling ride. What he got was a descent into madness. The slide twisted and turned, going on far longer than any normal slide should. The walls around him seemed to pulse and breathe, and a feeling of dread grew with every second. Suddenly, the floor beneath the slide unhinged, revealing a hidden path. Marcus screamed as he was propelled downward, the slide taking him deeper into the earth. The air grew hotter, and the smell of sulfur filled his nostrils. At the end of the slide, Marcus was thrown into a dark, cavernous space. He struggled to his feet only to find himself surrounded by zombie-like demons. Their eyes glowed with a malevolent hunger, and their skeletal hands reached out, grabbing him and chaining him up. "Welcome to hell," one of the demons hissed, its voice like nails on a chalkboard. "Jinx sends his regards." The demons dragged him towards the fiery pits where the screams of the damned filled the air. Marcus fought against the chains, but it was no use. He was pulled into the flames, the heat searing his flesh and the pain beyond anything he had ever imagined. As Marcus was consumed by the fires of hell, Jinx stood at the top of the slide, watching with satisfaction. He licked the last bit of cotton candy from his fingers, his eyes gleaming with malice. "Another one for the collection," he muttered, before turning back towards the park. There were always more thrill-seekers, more souls to lure into his carnival of shadows. And Jinx would be there, waiting, ready to offer them the ride of their lives. Emily had been working late, trying to finish a project for her college course. She decided to take a break and head to the amusement park, hoping the fresh air and bright lights would help clear her mind. She wandered through the park, enjoying the sights and sounds as the night wore on. As the park began to close, Emily found herself in front of the funhouse. The flickering lights and eerie music drew her in, piquing her curiosity. She glanced around and saw that the crowds had thinned out, leaving the park nearly deserted. "Looking for a little after-hours fun?" a voice called out. Emily turned to see Jinx, the clown, standing near the entrance of the funhouse. His grin was wide and unsettling, but his offer was tempting. "How would you like to experience the park after dark?" Jinx asked, his eyes glinting mischievously. "Free rides, all the cotton candy you can eat. Just for you." Emily hesitated, but the idea of having the park to herself was too enticing to pass up. "Sure, why not?" she replied, smiling. As the last of the staff left, the park transformed. The lights came back on, and the rides whirred to life, casting an enchanting glow over the empty grounds. Emily felt a rush of excitement as she ran from ride to ride, her laughter echoing in the still night air. Jinx watched from a distance, his grin growing wider. After several rides, Jinx approached her with a bag of cotton candy. "Here, have some," he said, offering it to her with a flourish. Emily took the treat, savoring the sweet, fluffy goodness. "There's one last thing you have to try," Jinx said, pointing towards the funhouse. "It's the best part of the night." Emily followed him to the entrance, her curiosity piqued. As she stepped inside, the atmosphere changed immediately. The air grew colder, and the once whimsical decorations took on a more sinister appearance. The laughter of clowns echoed eerily through the corridors. The first few rooms were typical funhouse fare, with distorted mirrors and shifting floors. But as Emily ventured deeper, the illusions became darker and more menacing. Shadows moved on their own, and whispers filled the air, speaking of nightmares and lost souls. She tried to turn back, but the path seemed to have disappeared. Panic set in as she stumbled through the maze, each step taking her deeper into Jinx's domain. Finally, she reached a large room dominated by a towering slide. "This is the grand finale," Jinx said, appearing beside her. "The ultimate thrill." Emily hesitated, but Jinx's gaze was unwavering. "You said it was the best part," she muttered, trying to convince herself as much as him. With no other choice, Emily sat at the top of the slide and pushed off. She expected a short, thrilling ride. Instead, she found herself on a descent into madness. The slide twisted and turned, going on far longer than any normal slide should. The walls around her seemed to pulse and breathe, and a feeling of dread grew with every second. Suddenly, the floor beneath the slide unhinged, revealing a hidden path. Emily screamed as she was propelled downward, the slide taking her deeper into the earth. The air grew hotter and the smell of sulfur filled her nostrils. At the end of the slide, Emily shot out onto the hard, rugged cavern ground. She struggled to her feet, only to find herself surrounded by zombie-like demons. Their eyes glowed with a malevolent hunger, and their skeletal hands reached out, grabbing her and chaining her up. "Welcome to hell," one of the demons hissed, and the rest sounded like a bunch of high-pitched Axl Roses. "Jinx sends his regards," it shouted. The demons dragged her towards the fiery pits, where the screams of the damned filled the air. Emily fought against the chains, but it was no use. She was pulled into the flames, the heat searing her flesh and the pain beyond anything she had ever imagined. As Emily was forced further into the fires of hell, Jinx stood at the top of the slide, watching with satisfaction. He threw up a heel kick and a little dance, his eyes gleaming with malice. "Another one for the collection," he muttered, turning back towards the park, whistling away. The job was done for now, as his quota is 2 souls per month. There will be more souls to lure into his carnival of shadows next month, and Jinx would be there, waiting, ready to offer them the ride of their lives. Meanwhile, down in hell, Emily notices she is not alone. She sees Marcus chained to the wall and looks like she's going to be joining him on that wall as the demons lock her to the wall like an animal. Marcus looked rough, but still alive. "Hey, psst, hey, how did you get here?" Emily asked. Marcus turns his head, so glad to hear a human voice. I got tricked into a funhouse from a sick clown at amusement park. How about yourself? Exactly the same, she says. If I only had the chance to get a hold of that clown. She goes on and Marcus interrupts with a self-made lockpick he made from a piece of loose chain. Her face lights up. I'm with you, she says. Let's get the hell out of here. Literally. As she smiles at Marcus, they discuss a plan and only time will tell if they have what it takes to escape the obstacles of hell. Their searing heat a constant reminder of their dire situation. Chained and surrounded by zombie-like demons, they were dragged towards a massive dark throne. Seated upon it was the king demon, a towering figure whose presence dwarfed all others. Welcome to my domain, the king demon intoned, his voice echoing like thunder. His eyes glowing with malevolent fire bore into them. You belong to me now. Emily and Marcus exchanged a glance, a silent agreement passing between them. They had to find a way out. As the king demon and his minions reveled in their despair, they spotted a small opening in the cavern wall, partially hidden by shadows. In a moment of distraction, Marcus whispered to Emily, "Now's our chance." They broke free from their chains with a strength born of desperation and sprinted towards the opening. Shouts of anger erupted behind them as the demons realized their prey was escaping. The narrow passage led them into a maze of tunnels, each more twisted and eerie than the last. The walls seemed to pulse with a life of their own, and the air was thick with the stench of decay. As they ran, grotesque figures and nightmarish scenes flickered in the darkness, manifestations of their deepest fears. They entered a cavern where monstrous, shadowy figures loomed over them. Emily's heart pounded as she recognized one of her worst fears: giant spiders. Their legs skittered towards her, eyes gleaming with hunger. She grabbed Marcus's hand, and together they darted through the web of nightmares, barely avoiding the grasping legs. Further on, Marcus faced his own terror, a sea of writhing snakes. They slithered around his feet, hissing and snapping. He fought the urge to scream, pulling Emily through the serpentine horror as they searched for a way out. The tunnels twisted upwards, leading them through chambers filled with ghastly apparitions and echoing screams. Each obstacle they faced was a manifestation of their worst fears, conjured to break their spirits. But their determination to escape kept them moving. They stumbled into a room filled with eerie, whispering voices. The air grew colder, and shadows danced on the walls. Emily shuddered as the whispers formed into cruel taunts, voices from her past that had once tormented her. She covered her ears and pushed forward, Marcus right behind her. The path grew steeper, the air thicker with each step. They encountered demons and monsters, grotesque and twisted, each more terrifying than the last. The ground beneath them seemed to shift and heave, trying to pull them back into the depths of hell. Finally, they reached a narrow, winding staircase that seemed to lead upwards. It was their only chance. With every ounce of strength they climbed, their legs burning and lungs gasping for breath. The staircase seemed endless, twisting and turning in impossible ways. As they neared the top, a deafening roar echoed behind them. The king demon had discovered their escape and was giving chase, his colossal form crashing through the tunnels. "Faster!" Marcus urged, pulling Emily along as they raced up the final steps. The air grew cooler, and a faint glimmer of light appeared above them, a beacon of hope. Just as they reached the top, a massive hand grabbed at them, the king demon's furious roar shaking the very ground. Emily and Marcus tumbled through the opening, landing in a dark, desolate landscape. They were out of the maze, but far from safe. They stood, catching their breath, their bodies bruised and exhausted. The king demon glared up at them from the depths, his eyes burning with rage. "You cannot escape me," he bellowed. "I will find you." Emily and Marcus knew their ordeal was far from over. The landscape around them was bleak and unwelcoming, filled with new dangers and horrors. They had to keep moving, had to find a way back to the world above. But for now, they had a moment of reprieve, a chance to gather their strength and plan their next move. The journey ahead would be fraught with peril, but they were determined to fight, to survive, and to escape the clutches of hell. They neared the edge of the infernal landscape. They saw a narrow path leading upwards. It was their only hope. With the king demon closing in, they raced towards it, their hearts pounding with a mix of fear and determination. The path was treacherous, filled with obstacles designed to thwart their escape. Demonic creatures lunged at them from the shadows, and the ground itself seemed to shift and heave, trying to pull them back into the depths of hell. But Emily and Marcus pressed on, driven by the hope of freedom. Finally, they reached the top, emerging into a cold, desolate wasteland. They were exhausted, their bodies battered and bruised, but they had made it. Behind them, the king demon roared in fury, his colossal form unable to follow them through the narrow path. For now, they were safe. But as they looked around, they realized their journey was far from over. The wasteland stretched out before them, filled with unknown dangers and horrors. They had escaped the depths of hell, but their fight for survival was just beginning. "Come on," Marcus said, his voice filled with determination. "We have to keep moving." Emily nodded, taking his hand. Together they began their journey through the wasteland, knowing that the ultimate battle for their souls was yet to come. They pushed through the harsh terrain, their bodies exhausted but their spirits unbroken. As they climbed a rocky hill, they saw a small, round object embedded in the ground ahead of them. It was a manhole cover, weathered and old, but unmistakably a way out. With renewed hope, they pried the cover open and descended into the darkness below. The tunnel was damp and narrow, but they pressed on, crawling through the suffocating space. After what felt like an eternity, they saw a faint light ahead. They emerged into the cool night air, gasping with relief. Looking around, they realized they were on the other side of the planet from where their nightmare had begun. The unfamiliar landscape stretched out before them, a stark contrast to the hellish world they had just escaped. Emily and Marcus collapsed to the ground, exhausted but victorious. They had survived Jinx's carnival of shadows, escaped the king demon, and found their way back to the surface. "We made it," Emily whispered, tears of relief streaming down her face. "We actually made it." Marcus nodded, pulling her into a tight embrace. "We're free," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "We're finally free." As they lay under the stars, the horrors of their journey slowly fading, they knew they would never forget the nightmare they had endured. But they also knew that they had faced their worst fears and survived. Together, they had conquered the darkness and found their way back to the light. A few weeks later, back in their hometown, Emily and Marcus donned disguises to conceal their identities. They were determined to put an end to Jinx's reign of terror once and for all. They made their way to the amusement park where it had all begun, blending in with the crowd. As the night wore on and the park began to close, they spotted Jinx near the funhouse, his malevolent grin as unsettling as ever. They waited until the last of the staff and visitors had left before approaching him. "Hey, Jinx," Marcus called out, his voice masked by a heavy accent. "How about one more round of fun?" Jinx turned, his eyes narrowing suspiciously. "And who might you be?" he asked. Emily stepped forward, her face partially hidden by a hood. "Just a couple of thrill-seekers looking for a good time," she said, her voice steady. Jinx's grin widened, but before he could react, Marcus swung a rock he had hidden behind his back, striking Jinx on the head. The clown crumpled to the ground, unconscious. "Quick, let's get him to the bungee ball," Emily urged. Working swiftly, they dragged Jinx to the reverse bungee ride and strapped him in. Marcus climbed up and carefully cut the bungee cords halfway, ensuring they would break under the tension. "Ready?" Marcus asked, his eyes meeting Emily's. "Oh, hell yeah, I am so ready," she replied, determination etched on her face. They released the bungee ball and it shot into the air. As expected, the weakened cord snapped and Jinx was launched into the night sky, disappearing into the darkness. "Let's hope he ends up far, far away from here," Emily said, watching as the clown vanished. With their mission accomplished, Emily and Marcus left the amusement park, feeling a sense of closure. They had faced their worst fears, defeated the malevolent clown, and escaped the horrors of hell. That slide to hell that gets me. You imagine take a slide down and then all of a sudden it just opens up and you're dumped into hell like dirt out of a dustpan. Yeah, be pretty scary. Hope you enjoyed. So the crazy news I had was Jasmine and I are opening up 3 more YouTube channels. So I will keep you all posted, and I know it wasn't that big of information, but it kind of is, because 2 of them are horror related and a lot more content put out, so that's exciting. Keep your eyes peeled and I'll always post and let you know what's happening. It's still being discussed, and nothing is final yet, but they are happening. So no worries there. Until next time, my friends, I will see you on the dark side. Sweet nightmares.